There comes a moment in human history when the familiar world suddenly feels too small, too thin to contain what's pressing against its edges. You can't quite name it, but you feel it. A pressure in the atmosphere, an ache behind the stories you were given, a sense that reality itself is holding its breath. You begin to notice the silence between events more than the noise of the events themselves. It feels as if something ancient is watching through your eyes, listening through your ears, waiting for you to remember what you agreed to before you came here. Across the ages, the Gnostics whispered of luminous beings beyond the counterfeit heavens, eons of mind, word, life, grace, truth, wisdom, pure currents of the divine pleroma. They said there would be a time when these eons would draw near again, not as gods descending from the sky, but as forgotten powers rising from within the human soul. They would not arrive with thunder and spectacle, but with subtle tremors in consciousness, questions that won't be silenced, longings that won't be shamed back into sleep, memories that don't quite fit into this lifetime. You are living in that time now. You can feel it every time an old pattern breaks under its own weight, every time a belief you once clung to dissolves in the light of a deeper knowing. You feel it when the world's noise becomes unbearable, and a quieter voice inside begins to grow louder, more insistent, more precise. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't coddle you. It calls you to grow up at the level of the soul. This is how the eons return, not with drama, but with a demand. They press against the walls of the demiurgic story and ask, is this really all you are? They expose every false identity, every inherited script, every hollow ritual. They are not interested in improving your cage. They are interested in showing you that you were never meant to live inside one. If you felt increasingly out of place in the very world you once tried so hard to belong to, you are not failing. You are registering the friction between the counterfeit order and a higher pattern reasserting itself. The discomfort is not a punishment, it's a signal. The architecture of your life was built to house a smaller self. The eons are here to show you it cannot contain the magnitude of what you really are. So if you've been asking quietly, what is happening to me? This is your answer. The story of your soul is intersecting with a larger story, one older than empires, older than religions, older than this universe's current configuration. You are living at the crossing point where the pleroma reaches back into a world that forgot it, and whether you feel ready or not, your name is on that calling. Tonight, as you listen, let this not be just another piece of content your mind consumes and discards. Let it be a mirror held up to the changes you've already been feeling. Let it name the signs you've tried to ignore. Let it confirm what you secretly hoped was true. You are not losing your mind. You are regaining your memory. One of the first signs that the eons are returning is not something mystical at all. It's something painfully ordinary. Your world stops making sense in the way it used to. Systems you were taught to trust begin to show their fractures. Institutions you once revered reveal their hunger for control. Narratives that felt solid now sound like thin scripts read by tired actors on a flickering stage. You don't know what the truth is yet. You just know you're being lied to. You notice that the values you were trained to chase, constant productivity, blind obedience, shallow success, no longer feel noble. They feel like chains. You see how people are praised for abandoning their inner voice in exchange for external rewards. You watch as fear is sold as virtue and numbness as stability. The more awake you become, the more obvious the manipulation looks and the harder it is to go back to sleep. This is not cynicism. This is vision returning. The Aeon of Truth does not arrive as a comforting idea. It arrives as a ruthless, luminous clarity that burns through the layers of illusion you once depended on. It doesn't simply tell you they lied. It shows you exactly where you agreed to live by someone else's version of reality. It confronts you with the ways you participated, the compromises you made, the little betrayals of your own knowing. As the eons draw near, your tolerance for falseness decreases. Lies that you once shrugged off now feel intolerable in your body. You might find yourself physically exhausted after engaging in environments built on pretense. Workplaces where everyone must wear a mask. Communities where questions are punished. Belief systems where doubt is treated as sin instead of a doorway. It's as if your nervous system is rejecting the counterfeit frequencies of the archons. You see it in the collective as well. Long-trusted structures wobble, scandals erupt. Leaders once revered are unmasked as puppets or predators. What was hidden in the shadows squeezes out into the light, not because darkness is suddenly stronger, but because it cannot hide as easily in the increasing radiance. The Aeon of Justice doesn't ask permission to reveal, it simply reveals. This unraveling can be terrifying. It can feel like standing on a bridge that's starting to crumble beneath your feet. But understand this, the breakdown is not a mistake. It is evidence that something higher is pressing down. Only the fragile fractures. What is true remains. The eons are not destroying your world out of spite. They are refusing to let you continue building your life on foundations that can never support your soul. If you found yourself increasingly disillusioned with politics, media, shallow spirituality, or even parts of your own personality, you are not becoming negative, you are becoming honest. The old spell depended on you confusing compliance with goodness. The eons are here to teach you a different equation. Truth plus love, even when inconvenient, is the only real goodness. So if the story around you is breaking, don't rush to tape it back together. Sit in the rubble for a moment and ask, what if this is what it looks like when the real story begins? Beneath the surface of disillusionment, another sign emerges, quieter but far more intimate. It is the ache you feel when you're alone, the one no achievement can soothe, no relationship can fully fill, no distraction can permanently silence. You could call it homesickness, but the home you miss is not a place on any map. It is a quality of being, a remembered wholeness you have no language for, only a longing. The Gnostics spoke of the human soul as a spark from the pleroma, exiled into a world of fragmentation. That spark carries a memory, not in words, but in a vibrational imprint. You once lived in a realm where you were fully known and never diminished, where love was the atmosphere and truth was not a threat, but a joy. When the eons begin to draw near, they press on this memory. The ache intensifies, not to torment you, but to keep you from making peace with half-truths. You notice it in small ways at first. A sunset hits you harder than usual. Something in you aches not because it's beautiful, but because it feels like a message from somewhere you've been. A piece of music unlocks tears you didn't know you were holding. You find yourself staring out windows, lingering on the threshold of sleep a little longer than usual, as if hoping some forgotten door will open. The world begins to feel both more alive and less sufficient at the same time. The eon of life is moving through you. It refuses to let your days be reduced to schedules and obligations. It whispers in those quiet in-between moments. Remember why you came. remember what you are. It does not flatter your ego with fantasies of superiority. It calls your soul back to dignity. You sense that your existence here is not random, not meaningless, not a cosmic accident. But you also sense that your current life does not yet fully reflect that truth. Alongside the ache comes sensitivity. You feel more deeply than before, not just your own emotions, but the currents around you. Crowded places can feel overwhelming. Violence in media that once barely registered now feels unbearable. Superficial conversations leave you empty. You start to crave depth the way a starving person craves food. You don't want more stimulation. You want more reality. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is the nervous system of the eons recalibrating inside you. The eon of grace does not harden you to survive. It softens you to perceive. That softness may feel like fragility at first, especially in a world that rewards numbness and armor. But in time you realize this sensitivity is the very organ by which your soul will navigate the return path. If this ache has been growing in you, the temptation is to interpret it as depression, failure, or a sign that you're too much. But what if it is the opposite? What if this ache is the proof that your soul is still alive, that your inner light refuses to adapt to a reality that doesn't feel like home because it was never meant to be your final home? The eons are not asking you to escape this world, they are asking you to inhabit it differently. The ache is their way of reminding you that you are not meant to be comfortable in a lie, no matter how well decorated it is. As the eons edge closer, even time begins to feel strange. Days blur and accelerate. Months evaporate. You look back and realize entire seasons passed in a haze, yet certain moments stand out with crystalline clarity, as if they belong to a different category of time altogether. You begin to suspect that what you were taught about linear time was a convenience, not a full truth. You notice patterns, powerful conversations, dreams, synchronicities, and inner shifts cluster around certain days or periods. You might experience déjà vu more frequently, as if you've lived this scene before or saw it somewhere else. Perhaps in a dream, perhaps in a realm beyond this timeline. It's as if reality is running multiple drafts, and suddenly you're aware of them overlapping. This isn't random. The eon of mind is adjusting your relationship to time. The rigid line is bending into a spiral, and you're beginning to feel the spirals, recurring cycles of learning, karmic loops, and windows of possibility opening and closing. Certain opportunities feel fated. Certain meetings feel inevitable. You sense that you are not just drifting through a neutral sequence of events. You are being woven into a larger design. Simultaneously, the veil between waking life and the subtle realms thins. Your dreams grow vivid, layered, and symbolic. You might meet beings of light, ancestors, guides, or even feel the presence of something vast and nameless watching over your journey. You wake up with messages, images, or phrases echoing in your mind, carrying a charge that ordinary thoughts do not possess. Sometimes it's not dreams, but waking synchronicities that speak. You think of a question, and the answer appears in a book, a song lyric, a stranger's words. You see repeating numbers, symbols, animals, or scenarios that feel orchestrated. A rational part of you wants to dismiss it as coincidence. Another part of you knows better. The eons are tutoring you in their language. Pattern. This can be destabilizing. When the veil thins, old coping mechanisms don't work as well. You can't bury yourself in busyness without feeling strangely out of sync. You can't pretend not to see what you see. The temptation is to label yourself crazy or delusional. But consider this. What if sanity in a sick world looks like seeing beyond it? The Aeons are not asking you to abandon responsibility or drift into fantasy. They are asking you to recognize that your soul is already interacting with dimensions your mind was not educated to acknowledge. The fracturing of time is not a malfunction, it's an invitation. You are being given glimpses of the larger tapestry. The question is, will you listen? No true return of the Aeons happens without the rising of Sophia. Her name has many forms: wisdom, Holy Spirit, divine feminine, the world soul, but her movement is unmistakable. She heals by revealing, and she reveals by refusing to be silenced any longer. When Sophia begins to move through humanity again, you see it everywhere, in the stories that surface, in the bodies that say no more, in the hearts that refuse to tolerate what they once endured. You see her in the collective shift around trauma. Suddenly, what was once buried and blamed on individuals is named as systemic. The hidden wounds of abuse, exploitation, spiritual manipulation, and patriarchal control rise to the surface. For a while, it looks like chaos, anger, grief, backlash. But beneath that turbulence is a deeper motion, the Aeon of wisdom reclaiming what was stolen. You feel her in yourself as a refusal to abandon your own knowing. Where you once dismissed your intuition as irrational or sinful, you now feel it as a clear inner compass. You begin to trust the subtle no in your gut before your mind can explain it. You honor the body's signals instead of overriding them for the sake of politeness or belonging. You stop sacrificing your truth on the altar of other people's comfort. Sophia's current also awakens compassion, but not the weak people-pleasing kind. This compassion has boundaries. It recognizes the divine spark in everyone while refusing to excuse harm. It knows that love without truth becomes enabling, and truth without love becomes cruelty. This is why her return is so disruptive to structures built on domination. They cannot control a heart that loves fiercely and clearly. In relationships, this shows up as a deep re-evaluation. Connections built on codependency, projection, or fantasy begin to shake. You may lose people. You may feel seasons of isolation. But notice what remains and what emerges. Friendships, communities, and partnerships rooted in mutual growth, honest reflection, and reverence for each other's soul path. The Aeon of Grace weaves these bonds quietly. Sophia's rising is also evident in the hunger for authentic spiritual depth beyond dogma. People who once accepted handed-down beliefs now question everything, not out of rebellion for its own sake, but because borrowed faith no longer holds their weight. They yearn for direct encounter, for experiences of the sacred that cannot be mediated by authorities or confined to rigid doctrines. The Aeons respond to that yearning like a tuning fork to a struck string. If you felt drawn to heal your lineage, to break cycles, to stop passing down what harmed you, understand this. You are not just doing your personal work. You are participating in Sophia's project of redemption. Every pattern you transmute becomes one less chain on the collective field. Every time you choose presence over numbness, truth over denial, tenderness over hardness, another thread of the old tapestry loosens. The return of Sophia is not sentimental, it is fierce mercy. She will not allow you to keep pretending you're smaller than you are. She will not bless what diminishes you. And if it feels like your life has been shaken, torn open, or rerouted beyond your control, consider, This may not be your life falling apart. It may be your exile ending. As the eons draw nearer, their presence does not just alter your thoughts and emotions, it begins to rewire the way you inhabit your body. The old split between spiritual and physical becomes impossible to maintain. Symptoms you once dismissed or medicated away suddenly feel like messages. Your body becomes a living scroll, inscribed with patterns, memories, and signals from realms beyond the visible. You might notice changes in your energy, sudden surges of vitality followed by deep crashes, strange tingling or warmth in your spine, chest, or between your brows, pressure in your crown, as if something is trying to open from above, waves of emotion moving through your torso without an obvious story attached. You are not malfunctioning, you are being tuned. The ancient mystics spoke of centers of light within the body, chakras, lamps, seals, each corresponding to different qualities of consciousness. As the eons return, these centers begin to resonate with their original counterparts in the pleroma. The eon of mind hums in your crown and brow, asking you to perceive beyond surface appearances. The eon of word vibrates in your throat, urging you to speak what is true, even when your voice shakes. The eon of life pulses in your heart, calling you back to living from love instead of fear. This tuning can be uncomfortable. Old traumas stored in the body rise to the surface. Memories you haven't thought about in years suddenly feel raw again. Habits you used to rely on, overwork, substances, constant distraction, no longer numb you in the same way. The eons are not punishing you. They are refusing to let you carry dead weight into a higher frequency. You may also feel drawn towards certain practices, breathwork, meditation, somatic healing, chanting, movement, time in nature. Not because they are trendy, but because your body knows it needs them. Pay attention to what genuinely soothes and clarifies you versus what just distracts you. The eon of truth in the body is discernment. Your system will begin to reject what is false, even if it once gave you temporary relief. Food, sleep, and environment become more important. You might lose your tolerance for certain substances, processed foods, or chaotic spaces. You may crave simpler meals, more water, more silence. The world will tell you this is overly sensitive. The eons tell you this is a sign of refinement. A temple receiving sacred light must be tended differently than a warehouse built for storage. If your body has become louder, more reactive, more expressive, more demanding of your attention, consider that this is not a betrayal, it is a collaboration. Your soul asked to incarnate, not to bypass the body, but to sanctify it. The eons are not returning just to crown your mind with lofty ideas. They are returning to inhabit your entire being. Your bones, your breath, your heartbeat are part of the altar. The question is no longer just, what do I believe? But how does truth move through me? Every choice, what you consume, where you go, who you allow close, either amplifies or interferes with that movement. When you start honoring your body as the living interface between the pleroma and this world, you are no longer just a person trying to be spiritual. You become a conduit for the eons. The closer the eons draw, the more desperate the archons become. These are not cartoon villains lurking in the shadows. They are patterns of consciousness, systems of thought, and structures of control that feed on fear, division, and forgetfulness. They thrive in secrecy, in denial, in the spaces where people are too afraid to ask, why are things this way? The return of the Aeons is like turning on the lights in a room where they have ruled for ages. You see this in the way propaganda, spiritual bypassing, and false enlightenment are collapsing. Narratives that once kept people docile. This is just how it is. You're powerless. Questioning is rebellion against God. Begin to lose their grip. People start recognizing how often their choices were carefully curated illusions. They see how media, education, and even religion have been used as tools to shape perception, not liberate it. Individually, you may notice your own inner archons. Voices that whisper, "Who do you think you are? Stay small. Don't rock the boat." Patterns that keep you looping in the same fears, addictions, and self-sabotage. Scripts that activate every time you approach real change. As the Aeon of truth rises, these inner tyrants cannot hide. They surface in full view, often louder at first, because they sense their time is short. This can feel like regression. You might think, why are my old habits back? Why do I feel more triggered than before? But what if this is not you sliding backwards, but the last stand of patterns that can no longer remain unexamined? The archons are loudest, right before they lose jurisdiction. The key is not to believe their commentary about who you are. On the collective level, you see archonic patterns in systems that prioritize profit over life, control over connection, appearance over reality. Institutions may increasingly use fear, distraction, and division to maintain compliance. The more people awaken, the more these systems will tighten their grip, for a time. But control is a poor substitute for genuine authority. And when enough people withdraw their consent, even the mightiest structures can crumble overnight. The Aeons are not asking you to rebel for rebellion's sake. They're asking you to discern where your energy is being harvested without your conscious agreement. They invite you to slowly, steadily reclaim your attention, your time, your devotion from dead idols, ideas, habits, and systems that cannot reciprocate love. Freedom, in this sense, is not chaos. It is alignment with a higher order than the archons can comprehend. If you felt more conflicted lately about your job, your affiliations, your consumption, your silence, take this as a sign. The unmasking is working. You are seeing what you need to see. The question now is not, are there archons? The question is, where am I still handing them the keys to my mind? For most of human history, the sacred was controlled through intermediaries, priests, texts, temples, rules. Access to the divine was rationed, regulated, sometimes sold. But when the Aeons return, the structure of covenant changes. What was once written on stone or paper begins to be inscribed directly onto hearts. Revelation becomes less about information and more about transformation. You notice this when teachings you've read 100 times suddenly pierce you in a new way. A verse, a mantra, a symbol you thought you understood now unfolds with unexpected depth. Not because someone explained it better, but because something inside you has ripened. The Aeon of mind is reconfiguring the way you receive meaning. You move from "what does this say" to "what is this doing to me?" You may also find that you can no longer tolerate spiritual performances. Sermons without substance, rituals without presence, communities that talk endlessly about love while subtly enforcing fear. Your soul flinches. You crave lived wisdom, not slogans. You want to sit with people who have bled for their understanding, not parrots of second-hand revelations. The Aeons honor this hunger. They begin to teach you directly, through life, through dreams, through deep inner promptings that carry a quality you recognize as more than me. You receive insights that feel too precise, too timely to be random. You sense themes threading through your days, as if an invisible hand is guiding your curriculum. Life itself becomes the scripture you are reading. This does not mean dismissing all outer teachings. It means relating to them differently. Instead of bowing to them blindly, you test them against the inner resonance in your chest. Instead of adopting beliefs to gain belonging, you wait to see what rings true in the marrow of your being. You move from borrowed certainty to honest, evolving trust. This is the new covenant, not law enforced from outside, but truth awakened from within. Such a shift is terrifying to controlling systems because it produces people who cannot be easily manipulated. When you know the Aeon of truth in your own heart, you are less likely to be swayed by charisma, threat, or groupthink. You carry an inner compass that does not bend in the wind of consensus. You can listen deeply, but you reserve the right to say, "This is not for me," even when everyone else is nodding. If you found yourself increasingly uninterested in arguing about doctrines and more interested in embodying what feels true and loving, take heart. This is not apathy, it is maturity. The Aeons are not grading your theology, they are reading your vibration. Your life, not your opinions, is the gospel you're writing. When the covenant moves into the heart, spirituality stops being a performance and becomes a relational field. You are no longer trying to impress God, the universe, or your higher self. You are learning to walk in step with a presence that has always been there, waiting for you to finally trust your own capacity to meet it. Another sign that the Aeons are returning is the emergence of what some traditions call the remnant, a scattered, often unseen network of souls who carry a shared frequency without ever having met in person. They don't fit neatly into existing boxes. They may not identify with particular labels, yet they recognize each other instantly through resonance. You may be one of them. Perhaps you've always felt different, even in spiritual spaces. Too intense, too questioning, too deep. You might have tried to dim yourself, to fit in, to be normal. It never quite worked. Lately, though, something has shifted. You've begun to suspect that your difference was never a defect. It was a signature, a marker that you were carrying a specific strand of the aeonic light. The remnant is not an elite club. It is a functional necessity. When a planet is undergoing an awakening cycle, there must be anchors, people willing to remember in the midst of amnesia, to love in the midst of violence, to stay present in the midst of sedation. They act as acupuncture points in the collective body, allowing the currents of the pleroma to flow into places that would otherwise remain cut off. You'll know you are part of this network not because you're better than anyone, but because you cannot seem to unknow what you've seen. You might try to go back to small talk, to pretend you don't feel the undercurrent in conversations, to ignore the way your heart breaks when you watch people harm themselves and each other. Yet you can't. Your conscience has been sharpened. Your sensitivity won't turn off. At the same time, you may feel less alone than before, even if your physical circumstances haven't changed much. Through books, videos, chance encounters, or online communities, you discover others asking the same questions, having similar experiences, using language that lights up your cells. You realize this is not a solitary madness. It is a distributed awakening. The Aeons are stitching together their human extensions. There is no hierarchy here. Some are visible, speaking, teaching, creating. Others are quiet, holding down frequencies in their families, workplaces or communities, often unnoticed. Some are elders, some are children, some are in positions of influence, others are hidden in ordinary roles. The measure is not status, but sincerity, not loudness, but luminosity. If you felt an increasing inner nudge to live more authentically, to align your work with your soul, to create something that carries the imprint of what you know to be true, this is part of your function. The Aeons do not need you to be perfect. They need you to be willing. Every small act of courage, saying no to what deadens you, saying yes to what enlivens you, apologizing when you're wrong, forgiving when you could stay bitter, sends ripples through the field. You are not just trying to be a better person. You are participating in a coordinated, multidimensional operation to reintroduce the frequencies of the pleroma into a world that forgot them. The fact that you're even listening to words like these is itself a sign. The signal got through. In the end, the return of the Aeons is not about phenomena, signs, or even teachings. It is about embodiment. It is about what happens when a human being remembers enough of their origin to let that remembrance shape their daily life. Not as a performance, not as a brand, but as a steady, quiet revolution in how they move through the world. When the Aeon of mind takes flesh, you become someone who sees clearly without becoming cruel, who discerns without demeaning, who thinks deeply without disconnecting from the heart. When the Aeon of word takes flesh, your speech becomes a creative act. You stop using language to manipulate, flatter, or wound, and start using it to bless, clarify, and liberate. When the Aeon of life takes flesh, your presence becomes nourishing. People feel more themselves around you, not less. This is not glamorous. It may not look impressive on social media. It will cost you illusions, comfort zones, and sometimes relationships. But it will give you something far greater in return: integrity, alignment, the quiet joy of knowing that, despite your flaws and ongoing struggles, you are living in conversation with the deepest truth you've touched. The Aeons do not return to make you special. They return to make you real. They are here to dismantle the false self, not to leave you empty, but to reveal the luminous core beneath. The more you say yes to that process, the more your life becomes a bridge between realms. You carry the memory of the pleroma into your workplace, your home, your art, your conversations. You become a mobile sanctuary in a world starved for sacredness. So ask yourself, gently but honestly, where am I still living as if I am powerless, when the very architecture of my being was designed to host divine intelligence? Where am I still waiting for external permission to do what I already know is right? Where am I still sacrificing my soul's clarity for temporary approval? The Aeons have already begun their return. You can feel it in your questions, your ache, your sensitivity, your refusals, your longings. The signs are not out there somewhere. They are moving through you. The real question is no longer, are they coming? The real question is, will I let them in? If something in you is burning as you hear this, not with fear, but with a fierce, trembling recognition, take that seriously. Tonight, you don't need to fix your entire life. You don't need to understand every mystery. You only need to make one honest choice: to stop pretending you don't feel what you feel, see what you see, know what you know. Because when a human being finally stops lying to themselves, the Aeons do not just return to this world in theory. They return in practice, in touch, in breath, in gaze. They walk the earth again through you.